Your brand new Ford is rolling off the assembly line with factory settings programmed directly into its computers that are quietly, systematically eating your drivetrain from the inside out. Most owners look at the digital screens and slick marketing brochures and think their truck is operating at peak efficiency. But the reality inside my service bay tells a completely different story. Ford designs these features to scrape by government emissions regulations and meet corporate fuel economy targets. But they do it by offloading the mechanical strain directly onto components that you will have to pay to replace the second your warranty expires. I have spent over 17 years tearing down these exact engines and transmissions, and I am telling you right now that the factory configurations are killing your vehicle's longevity for the sake of a fraction of a mile per gallon today. I am exposing 5 factory settings and defaults that are destroying your Ford without you ever knowing it. Setting number 4 is a silent killer that is baking your transmission fluid and degrading its lubricating properties before your truck even hits its first major service interval. And setting number 1 is so deceptive that millions of Ford owners actually think it is protecting their engine, when in reality, it is doing the exact opposite by starving your most critical internal bearings of oil pressure at the worst possible moment. Let's get into it. Setting number 5 is the factory-programmed 10,000-mile Intelligent Oil Life Monitor System. Ford tells you in the manual and right there on your dashboard cluster that the truck's advanced algorithm calculates driving habits, cold starts, and ambient temperatures to let you know exactly when the engine needs fresh oil. They claim it reduces waste and optimizes maintenance intervals. But here is what Ford doesn't tell you. That algorithm is calibrated to meet corporate sustainability metrics and lower the advertised cost of ownership for fleet buyers. Not to make your engine last 300,000 miles, when you let your modern EcoBoost or PowerStroke engine run on the same oil for 10,000 miles, you are actively grinding your engine bearings to dust. Modern turbocharged, direct-injected engines suffer from an inherent mechanical reality called fuel dilution. During a cold start, unburnt gasoline washes down the cylinder walls and mixes directly with the engine oil in the crankcase. By the time that oil has traveled 6,000 or 7,000 miles, its viscosity is completely broken down. A 5W30 oil becomes thin as water, dropping down to a 5W20 or worse. I have pulled oil samples from F-150s running the factory 10,000-mile interval, and the laboratory analysis consistently shows zinc and phosphorus anti-wear additives depleted down to less than 15% of their original levels, while soot and raw fuel levels are dangerously elevated. The consequences of this factory setting are catastrophic and completely invisible until it is too late. The thinning, contaminated oil fails to maintain a critical hydrodynamic boundary layer between the steel crankshaft journals and the soft metal rod bearings. Under high load, like pulling a trailer or accelerating up an incline, those surfaces physically touch. I have personally inspected rod bearings from 3.5-liter EcoBoost engines with only 65,000 miles on the clock that were completely scored and worn down to the copper backing because the owner blindly trusted the dashboard monitor. Furthermore, that depleted oil creates massive sludge accumulation inside the variable camshaft timing phasers, clogging the microscopic screen filters and causing the dreaded EcoBoost timing chain stretch, a mechanical nightmare that will cost you anywhere from $2,500 to $4,500 to fix at the dealership. The solution to this factory-induced trap costs you very little and requires zero tools. You must completely ignore the dashboard notification and manually change your oil every 5,000 miles or 6 months, whichever comes first. If you regularly tow or operate in severe idle conditions, drop that interval to 4,000 miles. When the oil life monitor hits 50%, that is your cue to pull the drain plug. By changing the fluid before fuel dilution destroys its shear stability, you ensure your engine bearings are never starving for protection, adding years to your powertrain's lifespan without spending a dime on unnecessary aftermarket additives. Setting number 4 is the ultra-low transmission temperature cooling strategy that Ford programs into the 10R80 10-speed automatic transmission. Ford markets this transmission as a marvel of modern efficiency, utilizing a specialized thermal bypass valve to quickly bring the transmission fluid up to an operating temperature of 205 to 215 degrees Fahrenheit. They claim this high operating temperature reduces fluid drag, which optimizes shifting and squeezes an extra half-mile per gallon out of the EPA fuel economy test cycle, but under real-world conditions. This factory configuration is creating the exact environment that destroys your friction clutches and cooks your transmission fluid. While 215 degrees might look acceptable on a computer simulation, it leaves absolutely zero thermal headroom for real-world truck use. The moment you hook up a boat, load up the bed, or drive through a hilly terrain on a hot summer afternoon, that transmission fluid spike jumps straight into the 230 to 240 degree danger zone. At 220 degrees, the Mercon UL fluid begins a rapid process of thermal oxidation. The chemical bonds within the fluid break down, causing it to lose its frictional properties and turn from a healthy red to a burnt, scorched brown. As a technician, I see the aftermath of this strategy every single week. The 10R80 transmission relies on incredibly tight clearances and highly sensitive hydraulic valve bodies. When the fluid oxidizes due to sustained high temperatures, it forms a varnish-like lacquer that coats the internal valves and solenoids. The valves begin to stick, leading to erratic shifting, harsh gear engagements, and the infamous hard 1-3 skip shift or harsh 8-7 downshifts that plague these trucks. Even worse, the excessive heat hardens the internal rubber pistons and seals, making them brittle until they lose hydraulic pressure entirely. Once pressure drops, the clutch packs slip and burn up. Replacing a destroyed 10R80 transmission isn't a minor setback. It is a massive $6,000 to $18,500 replacement bill that could have been completely prevented. The fix for this is a simple shift in how you monitor and manage your vehicle's systems. First, use your steering wheel controls to change your digital dashboard layout so that the actual numerical transmission fluid temperature is displayed constantly, rather than relying on a vague, useless dummy gauge that only moves when the transmission is already critically overheating. Second, if you are towing or driving in stop-and-go traffic, and you see that temperature sustained above 210 degrees, you need to manually intervene by locking out the upper overdrive gears, 9th and 10th. By forcing the transmission to run in a lower gear, you increase the torque converter lockup efficiency and raise the engine RPM, which spins the water pump and mechanical cooling systems faster, drawing heat out of the transmission fluid cooler and stabilizing your temperatures before the fluid is permanently compromised. Those first two settings are bad enough, but they are just the warm-up act for how factory programming actively shortens the lifespan of your vehicle. The next two configurations are even more insidious because they operate completely in the background, masquerading as advanced convenience features, while they quietly fatigue your electrical system and mechanically stress your engine's most critical rotating components. Setting number 3 is the factory-enabled Auto Start-Stop System default. Ford pre-programs almost every modern gas-powered vehicle to automatically kill the engine the absolute second you come to a complete stop at a red light, a stop sign, or in heavy traffic. The manufacturer markets this as a premier eco-friendly feature designed to cut emissions and save you fuel while idling. They assure you that the starter motor, the battery, and the engine bearings have been heavily ruggedized to handle the thousands of extra start cycles over the vehicle's lifespan. But here is the mechanical reality that Ford's engineering department knows, but won't put in marketing materials. The vast majority of engine wear occurs during a start cycle, not during steady idling. When your engine is running normally, the oil pump generates constant hydraulic pressure that floats the crankshaft journals on a microscopic cushion of oil. This is called hydrodynamic lubrication, and it keeps metal parts from touching. The very second that auto start-stop kills the engine, oil pressure drops instantly to zero. The oil drains back down into the pan, and the heavy crankshaft settles directly onto the soft Babbitt material of the main engine bearings. When the light turns green and you hit the gas, the engine fires back up, forcing the crankshaft to rotate momentarily with metal-on-metal contact before the oil pump can repressurize the passages. A standard vehicle without this setting experiences about 50,000 start cycles over its useful life. A Ford equipped with auto start-stop forces the engine to start up to 500,000 times over that exact same lifespan. You are multiplying the highest wear event an engine can experience by 10 times. I have torn down 2.7-liter and 3.5-liter EcoBoost engines with less than 80,000 miles, where the main bearings were worn completely down to their copper substrate solely because of this constant restart cycling. Furthermore, this setting puts an immense electrical strain on your starter motor and your expensive absorbent glass mat battery. Even though Ford upgrades these components, they still fail prematurely, forcing you into a $300 battery replacement or a $600 starter repair long before they should ever be due. The solution to this mechanical assault doesn't require you to buy any expensive aftermarket bypass modules or hack into your truck's wiring harness. Every single time you climb into your Ford and push the engine start button, you need to make it an absolute habit to immediately press the auto start stop deactivate button on your dashboard, the one with the capital letter A surrounded by an arrow. Yes, you have to press it every time you turn on the vehicle because Ford programs the computer to default back to on every single ignition cycle to satisfy emissions compliance. By making this 1-second button push a mandatory part of your starting routine, you keep your oil pressure constant, eliminate thousands of metal-on-metal wear cycles on your main bearings, and protect your starter and battery from premature failure for free. Setting number 4 was about your transmission, but setting number 2 shifts focus directly to your drivetrain's ultimate weak point: the factory electronic throttle calibration and shift scheduling inside the Select Shift automatic programming. Ford programs the engine control module and transmission computer to skip gears rapidly during acceleration, often jumping straight from first to third and then third to fifth gear under light throttle. They combine this aggressive upshifting with an incredibly lazy, delayed throttle response curve. Ford states this is optimized to keep the engine in the lowest possible RPM range to maximize highway fuel economy and deliver a smooth, seamless passenger car driving experience. In reality, this factory setting forces your engine into a highly destructive condition known as low-speed pre-ignition, or LSPI, while simultaneously overworking your torque converter clutch. When your 10-speed transmission rushes to get into 7th, 8th, or 9th gear while you are only traveling 35 miles per hour, your engine RPM drops down to a lugging 1,100 or 1,200 RPM. If you then step on the gas pedal to accelerate or climb a slight hill, the factory throttle programming tries to accelerate using massive turbocharger boost instead of downshifting to a proper gear. This creates a worst-case scenario inside the combustion chamber. Extreme cylinder pressures combined with low rotational speed. The intense heat and pressure cause microscopic droplets of engine oil mixed with fuel in the cylinder to ignite prematurely before the spark plug even fires. This creates a massive secondary shock wave inside the cylinder that collides with the rising piston. The violent force of LSPI doesn't just cause a harmless engine ping. It breaks spark plug porcelain, cracks piston rings, and can literally blow a hole straight through the side of a cast aluminum piston. I have pulled apart countless EcoBoost engines with catastrophic engine failures. Shattered ring lands on cylinder number 4 or number 6, where the owner was just casually driving down the road at low RPM, completely oblivious that the factory shift strategy was setting up an internal explosion. On top of that, to smooth out these low RPM transitions, the computer commands the torque converter clutch to continuously slip under load, wearing away the friction lining and contaminating the entire transmission with fine metal debris. A complete engine replacement for an LSPI-destroyed block will easily run you $8,000 to $11,000. Correcting this dangerous factory behavior is entirely within your control and doesn't require a custom engine tuner. All you need to do is change your driving mode selection every time you put the vehicle in drive. Switch your terrain or drive mode from normal or eco over to tow, haul, or sport mode. When you select these modes, you instantly overwrite the factory fuel economy programming. The transmission computer immediately stops skipping gears, holds onto its shifts until a safer, higher RPM range, and downshifts eagerly the moment you ask for acceleration. This completely eliminates the low RPM, high boost lugging condition that triggers LSPI, takes the destructive slip load off your torque converter clutch, and keeps your engine running in its mechanical sweet spot where it actually has the oil pressure and structural integrity to handle the power you are demanding from it. We have covered the maintenance traps, the cooked transmission fluid, the starter destruction, and the engine-shattering gear skip strategies. But none of those factory configurations compare to the sheer level of mechanical deception engineered into the final setting on our list. This number one spot belongs to a feature that is universal across almost the entire Ford lineup, and it is actively lying to your face every single second you are sitting behind the wheel. Setting number one is the factory-programmed, heavily dampened digital oil pressure gauge displayed on your dashboard. Ford installs beautiful, high-resolution screens in their modern trucks and SUVs, complete with needles, bars, and numbers meant to monitor the lifeblood of your engine, your oil pressure. Ford markets these advanced instrument clusters as a premium driver information system designed to give you total peace of mind and real-time telemetry regarding your engine's health. They want you to look at that needle resting perfectly in the middle of the normal zone and feel confident that your internal engine components are getting maximum protection. But here is the massive mechanical lie that Ford has been pulling for decades. That gauge on your dashboard is not a gauge at all. It is a glorified dummy light disguised as a precision instrument. The computer inside your Ford is programmed to read a simple, cheap binary pressure switch located on the engine block, not a true variable sending unit. This factory-installed switch is calibrated to trigger at a dangerously low threshold, usually around 5 to 7 pounds per square inch, PSI of pressure. When your engine starts up and hits a mere 6 PSI of oil pressure, the switch closes. The vehicle's computer registers this signal and artificially commands the beautiful dashboard needle to move right to the dead center of the gauge, locking it there statically. Whether your engine has a healthy 45 psi of pressure or a dangerously inadequate 8 psi of pressure, that factory-programmed dashboard needle will sit in exactly the same perfect, reassuring position. Ford does this intentionally because true oil pressure naturally fluctuates wildly based on oil temperature, engine RPM, and oil viscosity. If owners saw their actual oil pressure dropping down at a hot idle, they would flood dealership service bays with questions. So Ford chose to completely blind you to the real-world conditions inside your crankcase to protect their service network from administrative overload. This specific factory deception is the single most harmful setting on your vehicle because it completely masks critical mechanical failures until the exact moment your engine is completely destroyed. Modern high-clearance Ford engines, especially the dual overhead cam EcoBoost platforms and the complex variable valve timing Coyote V8s, require robust, high-volume oil pressure to operate their hydraulic cam phasers, structural timing chain tensioners, and high-load crankshaft bearings. If your engine oil begins to shear down, or if the oil pickup tube screen inside the oil pan becomes partially clogged with carbon debris from those long 10,000-mile oil change intervals we talked about earlier, your actual operational oil pressure can plummet down to 9 or 10 psi while you are driving down the highway. At 10 psi, your engine is actively starving for protection. The cam phasers will begin to physically score their aluminum journals, and the turbocharger bearings, which spin at over 150,000 RPM and require immense oil volume to dissipate heat, will begin to literally cook themselves alive. But because 10 psi is still slightly above that cheap 6 psi factory switch threshold, your dashboard gauge will stubbornly point to perfect. You will drive your truck for thousands of miles completely unaware that your valve train and turbos are chewing themselves to pieces, right up until the pressure drops below 5 psi. The needle suddenly drops to 0, the dashboard flashes a warning, and your engine throws a connecting rod through the block 3 seconds later. I have seen dozens of owners completely blindsided by a catastrophic engine failure, swearing up and down that their oil pressure gauge was perfectly normal right before the engine let go. The factory programming deliberately kept them in the dark until the damage was completely irreversible. The solution to defeating this engineered blind spot doesn't require a master mechanic certificate, but it does require you to take control of your vehicle's telemetry. If you want true protection, you need to completely bypass Ford's deceptive factory dashboard programming by installing a standalone, physical aftermarket, mechanical oil pressure gauge, or by utilizing a digital multi-gauge monitor that plugs directly into your truck's OBD2 diagnostic port to read the raw, undampened oil pressure data from the engine control module's internal sensors. By monitoring the actual, unedited numerical pressure values, you can instantly spot when your hot idle pressure begins to degrade or drop below 20 psi. This allows you to catch a failing oil pump, a clogged pickup screen, or severe oil breakdown early, saving you from a $10,000 engine replacement by executing a simple flush or a cheap sensor replacement on your own terms. When you look at all 5 of these factory configurations as a whole, a definitive, undeniable pattern emerges. From the 10,000-mile oil life monitor to the cooked transmission strategies, the battery-killing auto-stop defaults, the engine-lugging shift schedules, and the deceptive dashboard gauges, Ford has pre-programmed your vehicle to prioritize laboratory test cycles and corporate metrics over the long-term mechanical durability that you actually paid for. They aren't designing these systems to help your truck see past the 150,000-mile mark, because their business model relies on you eventually trading that vehicle in for a new one. But you do not have to fall victim to this engineered obsolescence. Every single trap we expose today can be entirely neutralized by a simple, disciplined shift in your daily operational habits. If you start changing that oil at 5,000 miles, manually monitor your transmission numbers, disable the auto start-stop on every single ignition key cycle, drive in sport or tow haul mode to keep your engine RPMs out of the dangerous lugging zones, and keep a true eye on your actual oil pressure, you effectively strip away the programming that is designed to wear your truck down. You bought the truck, you pay the insurance, and you are the one who has to foot the bill when things break down inside the service bay. Stop letting the factory computers dictate how long your investment lasts. Take control of your machine, execute these free behavioral changes starting today, protect your hard-earned money, and keep your Ford running flawlessly for hundreds of thousands of miles to come.